What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first stream live training at Sales Remastered. Had a couple technical glitches as I was signing on, so I appreciate you guys' patience. I got some real helpful information that's gonna help you. As stated in the notes under the video, the primary focus in today's live training is going to be geared around a new way to sell interest rates. So before I begin, let me go ahead and get a mic check. Just make sure everybody can hear me okay. If you guys can hear me, comment. Let me know. You guys got sound. Everything is good. Looks like everything's firing. Good. Okay, cool. So so today's gonna be a little bit different. It's gonna be a little bit different in comparison to the previous live streams, because in 2018 I want to get a little bit more interactive and a little bit more engaged with you guys and have some more pieces that you guys can really take away and implement into your day and going into your next sales pitch and even your next sales conversation. And just like I had mentioned, the techniques that I'm going to share with you guys here today has helped me and has helped my team, help the top producers that I've come across throughout my time within this industry sell beyond just price, rate, and fees. And I think that there's a stigma that has to go with the market and the recent changes that we've seen as of late, and we've kind of been conditioned. So it's not necessarily our fault. We've kind of been conditioned to only provide or offer the free services or the lowest costs and the lowest rates. And I believe the reason why we've been conditioned this way is because the main media in itself, right? Like the main marketing message is always going to lure our prospects to contact us in regards to offering the lowest rate, or sometimes offering no cost, no fee services. And so it's not our fault, because typically these are the immediate questions or requests that we get when we engage from the initial sales conversation. And what we're going to find is that our sale actually happens, right from hello, right from immediate engagement, from the initial phone conversation. And so the pieces that you're going to really pick up in today's live stream and this week's, and every week, by the way, so it's every Thursday, 8:30 to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, live streaming both on YouTube and Facebook. But in this week's live stream episode, we're going to talk about a new way to sell rates. And it's basically going to be a new way to sell your costs and your fees and your services. Now, I know it ranges depending on every single program and the day in the market. And so the message goes a little bit deeper. It's not necessarily just, it's not necessarily just selling fees and services. So my goal to you guys, and let me make sure that the YouTube page is plugged in first. Hold on one second, y'all. So I prepared a couple slides for you guys so you guys can get a chance to see this right now. And what we're going to find is that a lot of the times, a lot of the sale, it happens right from initial engagement. And so I got a couple slides for you. I'm going to bring it up on screen right now. And it has to do with a lot of myths that we're carrying over into 2019. A lot of the ways that we currently sell our rate, our fees, our services, and even our programs has to do with the way we've been conditioned the years before. And so what I've noticed in working in sales, throughout this entire time, is that what really differentiates a mediocre or below average producer versus like a top producer is the real main difference, or the main component is the top producer's ability to unlearn and relearn new concepts and principles. In other words, they're adaptive to the market. They're adapted to the particular prospect that they're talking to. And where I see a lot of loan officers tend to fail is because it's hard for them to unlearn things and relearn, right? So as I had mentioned, like the previous year in this slides example, I'm referring to the 2018 mindset, but really it's referring to all the previous year's mindset. And it has a lot to do with the way that we're conditioned to sell or offer our rate. And I need us to understand that selling and closing are two different things, right? So selling is just about kind of more or less keeping them attracted to you, right? You're selling them to give you a little bit more time. You're selling them to give you these little pieces of commitment, from making an appointment to giving their social security number to giving you information on their employment and their income. Whereas closing is actually where you solidify the deal. That's where you make the bond, and that's where you make the engagement. And so I got a couple myths that I want to cover in this live stream that we need to put an end to, right? And so the very first myth is that the rates are high and no one wants a loan. I believe that is a myth because we are, again, are conditioned based on the market and also in our environment, like the scenery that we have around us. We see a lot of loan officers sometimes freaking out. We see some veterans that we may rely on for support talk about how the market rate's going up. So they're preparing and they're talking about, oh, save your money, don't spend so much money. Oh man, the market's going down, my production's going down. And we'll sometimes lean on that experience and kind of make it our own reality. And again, it's not our fault because we're seeing kind of this panic all around us, right? And we hear the words and we have nothing else to rely on besides what we actually see with our own eyes or what we hear with our own ears. And so that's one myth that I want to put an end to in 2019, is that the rates are high and no one wants a loan. As a matter of fact, everyone wants a loan. You just need to understand what they actually want. I did a live stream a while back. It was telling you the difference between a product and an offer. No one wants a product. No one wants to refinance, right? No one wants to actually buy a $500,000 home or commit themselves to a 30-year loan. What they want is the offer. So understand how to distinguish the two between product and offer, right? What we sell is the offer. We don't necessarily sell the rate or the price or the program. And then myth number 2 is, let me go ahead and get over to that real quick. No one wants to pay points. They only want free services. You'll be amazed how many actual homeowners are open to paying points, how many homeowners are actually open to paying prepaid interest. If you've ever caught yourself actually competing with like a broker or another lender, you'll see that sometimes there's points involved, right? Origination points or discount points, whatever you want to call it. And we, again, it's not our fault, but we are conditioned to believe that prospects or consumers or homeowners only want the free services. They only want the lowest rate, no cost loan. And so sometimes we can become intimidated when it comes up to selling an offer with points. And so in this live stream, I'm going to show you different ways on how to sell your rate so that points or fees in itself is not necessarily the main focal point. To this day, when I sell loans, when I sell services over the phone, I can go throughout an entire pitch without the rate ever being brought up. I can go throughout the entire pitch and close the sale without the cost or the fee or the services. I'm sorry, the cost and the fee of the service or the rate or the discount points never even being mentioned. And there's a hack to it, and I'm going to show you some of those pieces in this live stream. But really what it has to do, again, is just focusing on the offer. Now, myth number 3 is if you believe that if you don't lower the rate, they're not going to buy. And again, that has to do with your own belief system. That's your belief pattern. That's what you believe. And so therefore it will radiate throughout your tonality, and it will radiate through your confidence and tone when you deliver that message. And so if you believe that they're not going to buy, they're simply not going to buy, right? It's truth of the matter. And a lot of times it has to do because you unknowingly, subconsciously, you're giving it off in a tone that has fear, like, right? It has like sprinkles of fear throughout your entire pitch because you're thinking too far ahead and you're always expecting the worst. So you're always expecting an objection, and therefore you're hoping it doesn't come up. And when it comes up, you become aggressive. And so I need you to really put an end to that myth. So rule number 1, in a better way to sell your rate and sell your cost is understand that it really does start from the sales conversation. The average loan officer is going to open up the conversation typically like this, like, hey, my name is Daniel. Thank you very much for calling me. It was a great day at my company. How can I help you? That in itself is just, it's outdated. It should not be how your conversation starts to some degree, right? It starts to that effect. And after the introduction, one of the very first questions that we'll tend to ask is, how can I help you today? Or what's your goal today? And ultimately what that does is it obviously gives them back control of the conversation. the true way of how to actually sell beyond fees, rates, and points, to get past a lot of the objections that's actually stopping you from making the sale, is because right from the very beginning, you allowed them to drive the conversation. So tell me if this sounds familiar. When you open up your conversation, you ask them, how can I help you? And they say, well, I just want to know what your lowest rates are. Or I saw an advertisement of 3.25 30-year fix. But what they didn't read was the fine print saying that it costs 2 points to get, right? And so when we hear this, it sets our tone, it sets our energy, and more importantly, it sets the kind of the rhythm of that conversation and the direction of that conversation to be solely geared around price. And so when we put ourselves in that, I want to say dead end, because you're actually killing the conversation by saying, how can I help you? You're gonna create this one comment from the prospects that are going to say, yeah, I'm just looking for a lower rate. Our natural response is, okay, well, what rate do you have right now? And that in itself kills the rest of the conversation. You are no longer positioning yourself to actually expose the reason why they want the offer, right? We position ourselves in a place where we now have to be on defense the entire point of the conversation. And so the immediate fix is to, number one, understand that they called you, right? Or you have something that they need. And typically that's information. That's all, right? And when we understand this, then we can also take control of the conversation. You see, what I've found is that when you're going into a sales conversation, and if you right now, if you tend to give them control of the conversation, like hey, how can I help you, or what's your goal today, you're allowing them to give you orders. And it is our obligation as the professional and the expert on the phone to actually drive that conversation. And so with our experience, whether you're a purchase agent or refinance agent, it is our obligation to drive that conversation. So it's not a question of like, how can I help you? It's a question of, okay, well, let me go ahead and make sure I can help you first. And I'm going to ask you a few basic questions just to make sure I can assist you. If I can't, I'm gonna help you save a bunch of time. If not, or if I can, I'll email you the information to your Gmail account, right? And so you're ultimately taking back control of the conversation right from the very beginning. But here's the key thing, is that you're actually setting up the expectation. You're setting up the expectation that you know what you're talking about, and that you're only going to help them if you could provide some benefit. And so if that opening line sounds familiar, it's because it has to do with my sales script. And sales script that I'm giving out right now, for free. It's located at salesremaster.com. If you haven't downloaded a copy of that sales script, do yourself a favor, download a copy of that sales script. It's going to show you how to do inbound and outbound sales. And I get comments all the time like, hey, do you have a script for realtors? That script is just in general, the wording in itself, the verbiage may appear to be like it's just for consumers, but really it's just the idea. It's the philosophy and the principle behind that approach that allows you to control the conversation, so you can kind of extract all the information that you need to attract them even further, right? And ultimately get them to the pitch table. But again, rule number one is that going into 2019, you got to stop asking, how can I help you? You have to already know how you're going to help them. More importantly, you have to assume that you are going to figure out a solution, and you have to set up the expectation that the prospect believes that if you can help them, you're going to help them save time at least and point them in the right direction, because it's a win-win, right? Like the primary concerns that they have is that they don't want to pay more than they need to. The primary concern that your prospect has is that they don't want to waste their time. So you're actually helping them address those immediate concerns right off the bat. So go to salesremaster.com. After this live stream, I'll put a link below this video in the notes, and request a copy of the free sales script that I give you. It's real powerful stuff. And on there, I also give you a quick checklist of benefits. So if you've downloaded before, like a year ago, 2 years ago, download a recent copy, a current copy, so that way you get the updated version of the sales script. And again, it's at salesremaster.com. But rule number two is you want to start listening. Like in your sales conversation, it is important that you do mostly listening. Like, yeah, you're asking questions, you're talking here and there, but you don't want to go right into a tap dance, right? Like where I see a lot of loan officers tend to fail or lose interest in the conversation is because they're more interested in marketing. Marketing is basically saying like, a we're the best company. Like, we've been around for 35 years and we do billions of dollars per month. And I've been with the company for 15 years. That's a tap dance. And when we go into that kind of that sound, right? When we make that sound during our conversation, we trigger an emotion within our prospect where they feel like they're being sold. So there's a better way to do this. It's a more subliminal way. And so, for example, if you say, if one of the main things that you say about your company is like, hey, we've been around for 10 plus years and we do $1 billion per month, we're nationwide, you can say it in a more covert way where the prospect will actually absorb it easier without any friction, without any resistance in thinking that you're trying to sell them. And so you can sprinkle it throughout your conversation where, in the conversation, if they say something, you could say, well, you know what, Jim, the reason why a lot of homeowners in Orange County choose my company is because we've been around for 25 years. As a matter of fact, we're actually doing over $1 billion per month in fundings. And since I've been with the company for X amount of years, or since I've been in the industry for X amount of years, I have rather helpful insight where I can show you exactly what you qualify for. Unlike all these other marketing pieces that you may see online, I actually can only give you information that's applicable to you, which is good because it's actually worth your time in reviewing. Watch, let me show you, and then you can bring them further into the conversation. But the key is to actually start listening. You need to be able to manufacture questions that exposes their needs, not necessarily their wants. When we ask them from the very beginning, how can I help you? We're hearing their wants. We're hearing that they want the advertised rate. We're hearing that they want a lower rate. And since we're in a service-oriented profession, it's kind of like our instinct to immediately try and give what they want. And this is where we find ourselves typically pricing, right? And we start to qualify. And so that's why I'm saying it's not your fault. It's just because you didn't know a better way to do it. But when you engage with your prospect and they tell you what they want, we are service, our profession it's all about service. So we're trying to serve a solution and we're trying to serve what they want. But that actually is the pitfall. That's the roadblock that we hit, because when we're trying to give people what they want, sometimes what they want is not available, right? So instead, try to switch up your technique, or at least your approach, and do a little bit more listening, right? Like, yeah, they want a lower rate, but why? Yeah, they want a lower payment, but why? Right? Yeah, they want a lower term, but why? You see, does that make sense? So you're actually identifying their why, and their why is their influence. That's their motivation. If you want something to create bond with you, if you want to know how to announce information that captures their attention, you need to really hear their why. And the only way you're going to hear their why is if you stop asking them, how can you help them? So a good manufacturer question that I always love to ask is, say, besides the mortgage, what other debt do you owe, right? So that'd be a refinance question. And that opens up the dialogue to talk about other debt. But let's say if you're a purchase loan officer, right? A purchase agent, you're just talking to pre-quals all day. A good manufacturer question to get them open up is to say, are you a first-time home buyer, right? Or are you selling a home before you're getting into the new one? Or what's your expectation with this new home? Is this going to be your retirement home or starter home? Right? And this opens up the dialogue so that you could position yourself to identify where they are mentally, where they are goal-wise, right? So if it's a first-time home buyer, then you understand that you're not necessarily selling the house. You're not selling a lock on that pre-qualification conversation. Same thing with the refinance. You're not selling a program or a product right away on that first conversation. You're simply getting to know your prospect. You see, I think the third rule, which has to do with one call closes, right? Like there's this belief that if you can close a call or close a client on the very first call, you're a superb closer. Well, truth of the matter is that you're giving yourself less chances to convert that prospect because you haven't had enough time to really absorb the content that you extracted or the information that you gathered in that initial conversation. So therefore, you don't necessarily have, I want to say, like, your gun's loaded, right? Like you don't have the full ammunition. You don't know what your full leverage is. You haven't had a chance to really digest and understand what X means to them or why they want to achieve X, Y, and Z. And a lot of times when even on purchase loan agents, when you enter into a conversation with like a pre-qualification, you're finding yourself trying to sell them the loan program or qualification. It's too soon. You have to take control of the conversation and really understand where they are mentally, because that's going to position you to sell regardless of whatever the market is, regardless of the points or the fees or the cost. You see, one thing that I've noticed is that by breaking up your conversations into two, so you do an initial conversation where you just talk about, obviously where they're at mentally, but what you're really doing is asking questions of how much awareness that they have of their current state, how much awareness that they have of their credit score, how much awareness that they have of their cash flow, how much awareness that they have of buying a property. All you're doing is figuring out and sizing up your prospect, right? So that you understand how to engage with them. You see, I think that the primary challenge that a lot of loan officers have, especially today, is the ability to shift gears, is the ability to switch hats. Because you're going to talk to Jim, and Jim is a seasoned refinancer, or you're going to talk to Jim, and Jim's already bought 3 homes, so he already knows what the course is. But when you switch gears and then you talk to Susie, Susie's never refinanced in her life. Susie's never been a homeowner in her life. You need to understand the difference between the two and switch up your dialogue, switch up your conversation, switch up the kind of the momentum of that conversation and what questions you ask. You have to make it compatible to them. And so when it gets down to it, the original initial phone conversation is really all about exposing their needs. It's not necessarily exposing their wants. If you base your conversation only off of what they want, you're going to fail more times than you actually win, because you're focused on the fact that typically you can't deliver what they want, right? Like they want that 2.99 30-year fix that's no longer around. And you're going to feel defeated because you're going to believe that you can't serve what they want. But you have to change your view on it and understand that you need to serve what they need. You need to give them what they need. And so the question is, well, D, how do I know what they need? They're going to tell you, right? Like we have this uncanny advantage to actually take the initial conversation and figure out how to sell them. And they're going to tell you how to sell them. They're going to tell you what their needs are, right? So a refinance client is going to tell you that they need to lower their payments so they can offset the cost of their other expenses. Maybe they've just had a new kid, right? Maybe the wife or the husband just went right back to work. Maybe they had some improvements. Now they got to replenish the bank account for kind of depleting their funds to fix the windows in their house. They're going to give you all kinds of signs that ultimately become your solution inside your pitch. And when you focus on what they need versus what they want, you're going to notice that there's a tonality change in your demeanor. The conversation that you have at the pitch table when it comes time to actually pitch the sale is not necessarily going to be around points, fees, and costs. So here's one huge takeaway, that if you can learn how to implement this inside your pitches, you're going to see a dramatic change right away. And this, again, has to do with refinance agents as well as purchase agents. But on the side note, for purchase agents, you one of the common questions that I get from the audience is, when after the pre-qualification, the fact that it's a 50-50 chance, or sometimes I never hear back from them after I give them a pre-approval or pre-qualification. And at the time of opening escrow, oftentimes I find that they've shopped me, or they got a better offer. Maybe the preferred lender got a hold of them, or the builder's lender got a hold of them. You see, the trick is, and the hack is, that you have to create the bond right from a first engagement, right? So refinance is a little bit different because it's from hello to pitch, typically within the same day. Whereas a pre-qual or pre-approval to opening up escrow could be weeks and months, right? And so the purchase agent, what you're going to need to focus on is to be on their radar constantly. Always provide value constantly. And so if you have not already started collecting testimonials from your previous clients, or video testimonials, very powerful stuff, where you can start collecting those testimonials and actually sharing it with your pre-approvals or pre-qualifications individually on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, where you're doing checkups. You should already be checking up. For those of you who rolled in Sales Remastered, I've given you a template on how to follow up with your pre-approved prospects out there and qualified prospects out there. If you haven't checked out or if you don't have your hands on that template or that course yet, check it out again at salesremastered.com. It's called Sales Boost Camp. But again, the point is, and the real trick is that you have to create that bond where the loyalty is what actually keeps them to you, because you've been delivering value the entire time that they've been shopping for homes, from random fun facts to amazing testimonials. And when they see different testimonials or different video testimonials, they'll feel like they're part of a community. More importantly, it'll be them selling you for you, right? It's automated. And so they're hearing like, man, Daniel does great stuff. Oh man, Daniel really helped these people close. Man, I love Daniel. I love Daniel. So that if they get persuaded or marketed by a preferred lender or a builder's lender, or they get a marketing piece inside the mail, they're not necessarily going to switch because they've become so vested into you. Now the refinance agents is a little bit different, because we go from hello to pitch typically within the same day or within the 48-hour time frame. But it's important that you do not mix your initial sales conversation with the pitch. So get away from the one call closes. Give yourself some time to really adapt to that particular person's point of view. Give yourself some time to digest exactly what they need, and be more focused on delivering solution. Where at the close table, if you find yourself, whenever, even if you're open up escrow, if you're presenting a sales pitch, there's a few things you want to keep in mind. Number one is you want to make sure that all decision makers are available. And sometimes the decision maker is not the person that you did the initial conversation with. You need to understand that. And you could tell by the things that they say, which again was rule number 2, you need to start listening. Because when they tell you like, I think or my wife sends, or my husband sends, you need to make sure that that person who's tied to the numbers or tied to or just basically another person. So there's another party. You need to make sure and do your best to ensure that they're present at the time of pitching, or you're not going to give yourself a strong enough chance to solidify that close. But when you go into your pitch, or when you go into even opening up escrow to lock your loan, what I like to use is say, hey, you know what? I was preparing the disclosures. I was about to send it out. I found something. I got an idea. I want to run it by you. Before I run it by you, I also want to get the input of your wife or your husband. Let's go ahead and bring her on real quick. It'll only take 2 minutes. I can conference them into our call, bring them in, right? And say, hey, you know what? I was actually preparing the information. I want to run something by you to get your feedback on it first, because I think that I might have something here for you guys. And so now you have their attention to where they're listening to you. They're not guarded as if you started your conversation and say, okay, I got option 1, option 2, and option 3. Which one do you want? That's kind of option overload, right? Where if you go in with like, hey, I got an idea, you're going to have them perk up and listen to you a little bit more, but take the information that you give them with less resistance and less, it's not a threatening conversation. Because when you say option 1, option 2, they feel like they got to decide, but more importantly, they understand that they could waive on any option and say no, right? Or let me think about it. That's one of the most common objections that kills sales is let me think about it. But more importantly, when you go into your idea, what you're doing is you're actually conditioning them to need you. So all you're doing is taking all the pieces and information that you've gathered from the very first phone conversation, the things like the fact that they only have $500 left in their bank account when all their bills are paid, the fact that their FICO score, because you waited till the second conversation to actually talk numbers, right? You didn't price, you didn't try to qualify or underwrite on the first conversation. After you did your research, you're able to find that the most common comment from the credit bureaus is that their balances on their credit card's too high, right? Or you found that before you opened up escrow and locked their loan, that you identified that the total cost, right, was a little bit more than what they initially had planned, and you want to help them kind of gain a little bit more traction by maybe buying down the rate so they can afford a lower payment. Does that make sense? So, so where I'm getting at is when you deliver your solution throughout the pitch, it should never start with price, rate, or fees. It should never say option 1, 30-year fix at 5.35%, but there's no lender fees, and I'm gonna cover all the closing costs or what have you. You have to get them tied to the payment. And so if you open up the conversation and said, hey, you know what, I got an idea. Since you mentioned in our conversation that X, Y, and Z is applicable to you, what I've done was I've taken consideration of your current payment, and ultimately your payment would go from here to here. Right now you have them believing all they're focused on is the difference. Basically what they're focused on is the offer. And so when you then explain what that offer does to them and how it ties to the exact needs that they have. So if I lowered your monthly payment. Now you have a solution to the credit card debt that you've accrued, or now you have a solution to the replenishment that you need to the bank accounts that you've depleted because you've had to do A, B, and C. Or now you have the ability to afford the extra liabilities now that you have a new kid, now that you have new daycare, now that your life changed, or now that you're going into retirement. You see how that works? And so what they're doing is they're absorbing nothing but benefit. They're absorbing nothing but solution. And so when it gets to it, you still haven't even announced the rate or the fees, right? You're just announcing the payment. This is why you can't do it on the first call, is because you need to structure your deal. You need to structure and come together with payments that have points in the loan, and then come up with a payment that has, no lender fees, no cost, and you're not really rigging up 3 or 4 different options. It should only be 1, 2 maximum. And the reason why you only need a few is because in that sales conversation, you did a good job with extracting the right information that you need to book that person. So you understand where they're going. You already know the road that they want. You understand the path that they need. And so in your sales conversation or the pitch, when you're presenting your idea, all it is just a proven path. It's an open path and a solution of how they're going to achieve exactly what they need, not what they want. Make sense? And so when you present it this way and they absorb all the benefits, and then they say, oh man, Daniel, that was a great idea. How do we do that? No worries. So I can't lock your loan right now. The only way that I'd be able to do this is if I validate your ability to proceed. So I'm going to need some documents from you first. I'm going to email you a quick checklist of a few items that I need to verify, and then we can be in position to actually lock in the loan and start the process. Or we can be in a position to lock the loan and start escrow. Whatever it is, you're presenting it in a different manner so that you don't have to get lost up in rate, fees, points, or costs. Again, to this day, I'm still selling loans. So I know what it's like to be on the phone with someone who only wants to hear about points, fees, and costs. But guess what? The way that I overcome it is I don't bring it up. I don't talk about points, fees, or costs throughout the entire conversation or even the sales pitch. All I talk about is how I can help them create a solution for the problems that they're feeling. So whether it's a refinance or a purchase, all I'm doing is creating value. All I'm doing is giving solutions. So I'm positioning myself as a VIP, a very important person for that individual, that homeowner, that home buyer to consider when it comes time to making a decision to initiate that transaction. And if you do this right, I promise you, you're gonna get less friction, and you're gonna be able to automate your sales process so you can ramp up your numbers. So if you want to learn more about this information, I have this one program called Closing Secrets 101. It goes into full detail of how to really break down the psychology and break down the resistance of your prospect. And that's primarily for like a refinance agent, right? It's called Closing Secrets 101. But if you're a purchase agent, you want to know how to approach realtors, you want to know how to market yourself to realtors, you want to know how to create referral partnerships. If you want to know how to position yourself more favorably to have business and revenue come in for you while you're finding new business, then the Sales Boost Camp is for you. All the information that you need is at salesremastered.com. I invite you to check it out. If you haven't subscribed to any of the pages that I'm on, like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, or what have you, I'm gonna leave links below this video so that you have direct access to find me and you'll be able to get all the information that you need there. I invite you to learn a new way. And the only way that you can learn a new way is you have to unlearn, right? You have to unlearn some of the bad habits that you took in with you from 18 and 17 and 16, all the years before us. And when you understand the actual principles of selling, selling is just persuading. It's just selling an emotional state. It's transferring an emotional state to the person you're engaging with so they see you as the solution. That's really what selling is. Now, hopefully the information I've shared with you is going to teach you how to close more loans. It's going to teach you how to close more business regardless of the rate and fees and price, because it's the delivery that counts. It's not the rate, fees, and price. So if you can get out of that mindset of believing, because 99% of the time it's just your beliefs that relays through your tonality that then changes their perspective or gives your prospect the perspective of how to go in. So if you're talking about program, price, rate, if you're pricing up deals from the very first conversation, or if you're trying to sell a lock or sell a house when they haven't even been pre-qualified, been pre-approved yet, understand that that is the primary reason why you're losing deals right now. So I hope that the information helped. Give me some comment. Let me know that this information has been helpful. But more importantly, visit me also next week on Thursday between 8:30 and 9 a.m., where I'm going to bring to you again on a weekly basis these live streams that are designed to help you, give you the current state of the market, give you new ways of how to secure more business. And when you secure more business, you can take that money and invest in yourself, boo-boo. Go to salesremastered.com, learn about the programs that I have. Let me work with you one-on-one, become your mentor. But more importantly, today, to get the momentum going, go to salesremastered.com and request a copy of the free sales script. Use your personal email address. Don't use your work email. Your work email will quarantine me because it's coming from salesremastered.com. So again, go to salesremastered.com, learn about my courses, and get a copy of that free sales script. Have a great day. Salute you for joining me. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.